Welcome to one of Radical Vision's podcasts. This is one in a series that we're trying to put together to kind of capture some of the history of both us as individuals, professionals, but also our history of Inclusion Glasgow and the organisations like Sea Change that came from Inclusion Glasgow. So I'm joined today by John from Radical Visions, John Dalrymple, but also Sam Smith, who's a massive part of our history and our story, and a colleague that's been working with us for many, many years in so many different ways over the years. But we're going to go back and talk a bit about the beginning of kind of how we all got connected. And that beginning takes us way back before Inclusion Glasgow, because as we've kind of talked about before, Inclusion Glasgow came out of some of the closure programme that was being set up for people coming out of Lennox Castle Hospital, and wouldn't have happened without the commissioning team and without John, who was heading that up, and Sam, who was involved in that commissioning team. So we're going to go back to that point. So I'm going to ask you two, I'm going to hand over to you two to have a kind of conversation about the work we're doing then together in Lennox Castle Hospital.
Yeah. Okay. So we first met, I would imagine, 1995 at Lennox Castle Hospital, and I know, Sam, you'd been working, as I had, in Strathclyde Regional Council, which was getting dismantled. You were working in the research section of that. How did you get recruited to the project in the first instance?
Well, I've been doing some research. I was a researcher, and I met Nikki Bruce, who was a social worker out in Drumchapel, headed up the team, learning disability team there. And then Nikki had moved to Lennox Castle to be part of the commissioning team. Margaret Wheatley was part of the commissioning team, and she'd gone off on mat leave. I had been away travelling for a year, and I'd come back and I was like, going back to the same old job. And so when the mat leave came up, Nikki said, "Oh, would you be interested?" And I was like, might as well. So I remember rocking up for an interview with Gina Hagan and Julie Murray.
Right.
And I think it was just the fact that I wasn't very institutional. And I had a long history of involvement with learning disability, learning disabled people. I was very fortunate to be brought up in Helensburgh. We had a really strong branch and a strong advocating families. Some of my good friends had intellectual disabilities. So thought I'd give it a whirl.
Yeah.
And didn't ever leave.
Branch of Enable, when you say branch, yeah?
Oh, yes, it was a branch of, MENCA, Scottish Society for the Mentally Handicapped, as it was called then. Yeah.
Wow.
Strong families fighting for better for their children.
Is that how you met Brian?
I met my now husband. I used to go on holidays with people, friends from the youth club that I used to go to, and some people who we used to go and pick people up from the hospitals, Murchison Hospital and Larbert Hospital, and then go on holiday together to what were called the camps, and that's where I met Brian at the camps. Yeah.
And the rest, you see, it's history.
Yeah, and I never left.
Was there any inkling for you that might be the case, that you wouldn't leave, in inverted commas?
It was a tough job, the job we did at the hospital. But kind of, when you start, you just can't not. Though I do remember, I remember so distinctly just how hard it was, because it was Lennox Castle Hospital. We were commissioning services for people anyone who was Greater Glasgow Health Board funded. So
Yeah.
the people were scattered all over the place. So, but I was also linked to RSNH particularly. So there was a number of wards, and it was 87 people in RSNH that I was involved in commissioning services for. So it's a really, and people weren't keen on the idea of the hospital closing, not some of the families, certainly not some of the staff who worked there, and some of the people that we were supporting to move.
It was massive.
Oh, it was a massive.
It was massive. Let's just be really honest. It was massive.
Yeah.
It was a massive thing to do, and it was very, very challenging for the people who couldn't see anything but what existed and were so invested in that for all sorts of reasons. And you say families as well, because families were scared because they didn't know what the alternative looked like. And so if they'd had nothing before and then their family member was in Lennox Castle Hospital, they felt at least it was safe and they knew what it looked like. But it
wasn't safe.
It wasn't safe, but for a lot of the families who wanted it to continue, they obviously believed that on some level. And then, but they didn't know what else it would look like. I suppose that was the thing. We weren't.
I think also we were learning on the job, which
absolutely
couldn't have given them great confidence, I suppose. But we were trusting, I suppose, that there was something better. Like professionally, we were saying
creating it.
We were
exactly fitting people into things that existed. It was
creating it.
100% right.
Securing the housing, engaging with organisations, provider organisations, trying to really mobilise to do something different. And that there was so much learning by everybody at the same time. But there was a clear purpose to what we were doing, and a clear desire to do it differently than had been done before, which was about people having their own homes, not being bounded by registered properties that required signs on the backs of doors. And
I think we come in with a few basic concepts that we would try to just stay true to in terms of separating housing from support and keeping people living on a domestic scale. I mean, that was probably as best as we could have defined it at the time. And even though, again, some of it you can kind of go, we do it differently now in hindsight, but really trying to listen to people, the person-centered planning that went on. And I literally remember having conversations about wallpaper with people, and folk go, no, we can't have that wallpaper. Someone had chosen wallpaper with elephants on it, and it was elephants on the walls and elephants on the border, and I was like, actually, it's okay if he chooses that. Of course, it's okay, because if he decides, and the first time you've ever chosen wallpaper in your life, that you then don't like it, you can change it. But the fact you made a choice, it's a deviancy image juxtaposition. It's a deviancy image juxtaposition, Wolfensberger would have said.
Passing.
But you're absolutely right, Sam. It was that kind of doing it for real, not just in theory.
But for people who, and we have to remember that they often had no choice over how they got their tea and coffee, because it came in that big, tea in the big urns. So honouring a choice over,
absolutely,
I asked for this and I can see it's happened, seems to be the first step in believing your voice mattered.
Being listened to and being heard.
But you're also right that we had to navigate politics.
Yes.
Whether it was the parental lobby for the kind of reasons Francis has spoken about, that they were not sure what all this was about, and so they were going to cling on to what they knew. But also the people who worked at Lennox Castle, they had a wish to hold on to their jobs, hold on to that thing that had been part of their community since forever. And I guess if you're going out into other hospitals, like the RSNH, which we should maybe just say is the Royal Scottish National Hospital, for those created for that kind of purpose, a national centre for bringing people together. That was another place then in jeopardy of closing. So wherever you went, really, there were people who didn't want you to achieve what you were trying to achieve, I would say.
Pretty much. And some of the people who lived in the hospital too.
Yeah.
who had spent a lifetime from sometimes birth through the different wards in Waverley Park, and had made a life for themselves in that space.
Made the best of it.
I mean, there was one gentleman who was supported by Inclusion, who I had the first conversation about the hospital closing with him, and then every time he saw me, he burst into tears or ran away. I mean, that was really hard, when you're trying to do, well, hard for me and even more so for him, because I was ripping asunder, as far as he knew it, everything that he knew, and he was incredibly resourceful, and he'd made a community for himself. And here is where I think there is something in that, because there's always more we could have done, but we tried to recognize that and deal with that with compassion. And in that instance, given his reaction, we commissioned Inclusion to engage with him, to link with somebody. I think it was for a year.
It took about 2 years
for him to move. Now, that opportunity to commission, to link somebody, to nurture and develop a relationship, to support him to begin to see there was a world outside the hospital.
Yeah,
I mean, we have a program that, coming home. Now, I'm not currently with people who've been in hospital for a very long time. I'm not sure how much of that is happening now. Recognizing that for people,
absolutely,
the relationship building on that, with that length of time, honouring that is happening.
I agree completely. That was massive, wasn't it? Having that space to develop that relationship, to help that person build a community, a sense of a life in a community first, and work out where he wanted to live. And then we helped him actually buy a house. And in that community, which again was pretty different at the time. But without the thoughtful commissioning and the support of you, and actually making that happen, that person, it would have been, I don't know how he would have moved. I don't know what would have happened in that situation. And he successfully moved. But it was a lot of investment and time and patience. And
so we were trying.
Can I just be clear though? So just because there's an economic framing to this, there was upfront investment in time in building that relationship. But the ongoing cost when he moved into his home wasn't of managing a man in distress.
No. He actually lived a lot of independent. He had flatmates. He then really reduced his support. He ended up connected with his community, being really well known and loved. Because he worked in the hospital, if you remember, and then he had to make sure that all those things were in place, so he'd get a job and have all that community around him at work, and so he did all of that, and he had a lot of independent time. Absolutely.
Financially.
Ongoing. No, absolutely.
But I think it's because we see things in silos and isolation. So, that spend, it's too expensive. You could have predicted quite easily the level of distress he would have experienced had we done it any differently. And he would have probably spent his time either in the hospital or being managed in. So
there was an attempt. There was an attempt to work with one person at a time. In that sense, here's a guy. He's got a particular. He's not just a guy living in an institution. He has a particular story about how he's adapted, what the institution means to him, what leaving the institution might mean for him. Yeah. So I think we did, somehow or another, we found a sense of purpose, as you said, Sam, quite early on.
Yeah.
And I think that was a strong motivating force when, we sent you off to RSNH as the... what was that like on reflection, going out into that territory?
I mean, there were good colleagues out there. There was always people who were trying their best, but you're someone who's trying to do something most people don't want to have happen.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I was whilst I was commissioning I was the link for all of the people that were there until there was a point where actually some were Eastern Marcher, and then our colleague Pauline took that on. But I was particularly involved in EC ward, which was the challenge and behaviour ward, as they called it. And then, you're just seeing and experiencing things that are just hard. They were hard then, and now I look back on it and I think, I think, gosh, was there more I could have done?
Right.
Just real inhumanity.
I remember, though, Sam, when you were in that role of commissioner, how strong you were in that role, and how much of a catalyst for change you were. Like, you'd be sitting in the room and thank God Sam's arrived to help this, whatever was being, seriously.
There's a commendation.
Around or panicked around a person. We'd be obviously in a role trying to work with that person. We'd obviously been asked to get involved, and we'd be seen on one side. Do you know what I mean? And then you'd have all of the stuff that was going on, but you would come in and you would just you had an ability to really cut through the crap with people. I don't know how else to explain it, but you really did. You were able to help move things on, absolutely move things on for people, get people unstuck, get people, not that you did have an amazing ability to do that. And I used to think, thank God it's Sam that's commissioning. Do you know what I mean? That's because there would just be, you knew that we would be able to get there, and we would be able to kind of get sensible decisions made for the person, and not get lost in the panic often that was around for people. You were always able to kind of bring that down. That was my...
Well, I thank you for that. It's kind of very kind of kind reflection. I think what navigated me, and still does, through that would always be the person.
Aye. I mean, I just accept that we're giving you a bit of a compliment as well. So.
No. I'll take that. But it's like, what's your compass? What's your
always there. You're 100%.
You're on that path, and it's what's right for the person. Is this how anyone else would be being treated? And if it's not, then what are we doing? And so much of what happens around people is about that othering, and so the cutting through it is just to kind of go, why would we do this?
Yeah.
Well, what if we did this instead? So no, I mean, I'll take the compliments. I think it's a great memory.
I just remember it thinking, oh, thank goodness. The voice of reason, and you would be able to, because it was hard. It was a hard job.
And again,
you're a maverick. I would call you maverick in that role as well. Even compared to the other commissioners, you had a very different style, and you had your own kind of approach. And that's how I would say you were it's maverick a good?
Well, it can be, and I think the fact that you had the scope to be yourself in that role. Mm-hmm. Whilst holding on to you were there for the person or for the range of people. That was the defining kind of sense of direction But you could bring your own skills to that then, your own particular. Yeah.
Yeah. I think what I recognise in other people who maybe perform that role for me now and or for the organisation that I'm involved in is that people who don't lose their head. Just being able to kind of be calm and considered.
Yeah.
And I think people get very anxious around things that happen, and that anxiety can drive action rather than the reality of what's needed.
Yeah.
And so being able to pause, and I think
bring perspective.
By nature, I'm not, I don't think, very kind of incendiary. I'm quite considered. So I think that helps. But there's also, particularly around people who are complex and require of us that we do better. I think there is a strange dynamic that people get kind of buy into the hype, that somehow it reflects on how good you are because this is how tricky this person is, instead of thinking, well, what have I got wrong here? What could I have done better? What you need is, in those moments, you need humility to think, gosh, if that person is still distressed, this isn't a mark of, how good I am at my job. It's actually I've missed something.
Yeah.
So the second
still plays out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's a whole dynamic around. And coming back to some of the things we were discussing before we started this podcast today, the kind of judgments that then get made, and how they fuel that hype. So there's a second part to the story, which kind of, I think, takes place once Gina and I move away. 1998, we go to form Support for Ordinary Living in Lanarkshire, and the work continues, obviously, in helping folk move on from Lennox Castle. Inclusion Glasgow's in place.
We were set up in 96.
96.
So we're kind of the conversations we've just had really are about that time.
Because I was working with you.
You were working as a commissioner. Many of the people that came to Inclusion Glasgow were the folk that you were working with in the hospital. So we had obviously got massive support from John and from Gina as well. And so when they left, there was a bit of a void in some way, a bit of a fear. You moved to a different role in terms of being a colleague when you set up Sol Support for Ordinary Living. And obviously we worked together in lots of continue to work together, closely in lots of different ways. But in terms of the next bit of kind of where we were in terms of Inclusion Glasgow and how we continued that story, it's a bit of a moment but we shouldn't have been so worried because Sam was there. And then Sam, we got to a point, I'm trying to think of the timing of that, where the hospital closure programme went into what it called phase 2. So it had been, helping people leave over a period of time, and you're talking about inclusion. We were obviously not the only provider, so lots of providers were involved in helping people move and leave Lennox Castle. But this was like a second phase of commissioning. Do you want to maybe describe that? Because you were kind of involved in that from the hospital point of view, weren't you?
But when the closure programme was started, it wasn't a complete closure programme. It was a retraction. It wasn't the agreement wasn't to close the whole.
That's right. The Secretary of State's permission hadn't been obtained to close the hospital.
To complete it. So we were closing the top site wards. There was a kind of retraction, and then there was the agreement to the second, the closure. And even then there was arguments over how many people would remain being supported by the trust. So yeah, when John and Gina left, I still have a card that John wrote and left. Yes. And then I took on specifically the link commissioning role with inclusion, not just through the work of commissioning services. So the second phase of the hospital, there's probably one thing that, because we were learning as we did it, that we would never recommend for anyone who's deinstitutionalising, which is to leave those people who are most seem to be most complex to the end. One, it just gives you a bottleneck. But two, it's not necessary. You just kind of learn your stuff earlier on and do. But that's kind of what we did. So there was a number of people, a significant number of people who were seen to, well, at the time, the suggestion was, because there was this negotiation about how many people might remain being supported by the trust, this larger number might not move into the community because they weren't seen to be able to be supported. So the negotiations, the wrangling happened, and the number got smaller and smaller that were going to be retained by the trust. But it meant that there needed to be organisations to do the work around supporting those other people. So inclusion had always had a notion of staying small, supporting a specific number of people. There were other ideas of growing organisations, but there ended up being a discussion really about whether there would be the opportunity to set up another organisation to do that work. So to cut to the chase, really, the commissioning lead in Glasgow, the person who headed up the Health and Social Care Partnership at the time, agreed to seed fund an organisation because of the tendering and commissioning arrangements. I mean, it had to be set up within another organisation anyway, which is it's a great way of doing it. Inclusion didn't want to grow bigger, but it wanted to keep on developing the way of working. So as a replication model, or as a way of, what do they always call it? What do they always talk about how to?
I think in terms of so we originally were commissioned for 20 people. That original kind of
scale, that's the word I'm looking for. Scaling. Everyone talks about scaling.
We were commissioned for the first 20 people. We also then had worked with a number of those people, as we just kind of described before, not by intention, but because we were doing this very individually. Often those folk were coming to us where they were the kind of folk that weren't happy to go and live with lots of other people that had those came from some of the wards where people had reputations, and we were learning to work with those folk on the job, and not intentionally. And we had Doreen, who is going to come and join us at another podcast, but just important to maybe bring. Doreen was around in this story, and Doreen Kelly had joined us, and Doreen was, because we had already, as you say, as an organisation, made a commitment to thinking we want to stay small, we want to stay focused. We think this is the right way to do this work well, is to stay small, but we wanted to grow the way of working, and we wanted other organisations to be able to develop and to have their own identity, but develop in a way that helped other people have this kind of very individualised support arrangement. So Doreen was, so when we went, if I remember, we went for the phase 2 tendering process, which would been quite early on. It was Doreen and I that were there, And Doreen, at that point, had been with the organisation for a wee while, and she was kind of thinking she'd been looking to try and set part of the organisation up near her, and it really wasn't happening. And so in her mind, I think, and in ours, maybe she would have been leading that part. And then suddenly all this stuff started to happen near her, and they were offering that, as you say, that seed money to start to do some of that work. And we were successful in getting this phase 2 part. And we were like, we need leadership. We need somebody who wants to come and lead this, as you say, new organisation, because both of those organisations, yourself, Sea Change, which became Sea Change and Partners in Inclusion, was intentional from the start that it would be a separate organisation, that it would have its own identity, it would have its own leadership, although it grew from the organisation within Inclusion Glasgow and was there for
it might be worth noting at this point, because I was working with Doreen when I was a commissioner to decommission Middleside and Thornwood and other health resources, and in the process of decommissioning them, which was to take them from being trust-run services to people being supported by other organisations but in their own home rather than a congregate service, through that process released some funding that was then used to support Doreen to set up neighbourhood networks. So the idea of the fertile ground of collaboration between commissioning and a provider to not just grow exponentially, but to create things that have their own
and be prepared to work towards that independence of each of those parts that you were that was growing from. And neighbourhood networks, absolutely. I think Pat Black was very involved in that, and that was Keyring, the model of Keyring down south, and bringing that up to Scotland and thinking about how do we. This is something that is valuable for people here. How do we do that? And getting that funding. I think we'd forgotten that. You mentioned that the other day, and it is interesting how you forget some of those details. That how that was funded. I know that Doreen absolutely led that at the time she was part of Inclusion, and Neighbourhood Networks, as we know, is a national organisation, and
still going strong.
Still going strong. So I said to Sam, how do you fancy?
You just answered the question I was going to ask there. So the initiative was taken by yourself, Fran?
Aye,
was it a more?
Wasn't it?
I mean, I wasn't applying to be on this second tender. I was
we approached
I was working in the hospital to do that work. At the time, we were the momentum was shifting, though, where we were being asked to do more of the link community-based commissioning work. So whilst there was a tranche of work to happen at the hospital, there was a defined closure date, which was 2002. So our focus was then straddling community-based and hospital provision. Inclusion applied to be on the for the second stage of the closure programme. There was a conversation with Francis, and then there was the conversation with the divisional, the head of the.
Remember, is it trying to work out the finances?
And working out the finances and the number of referrals in order to be of service. So
to be viable, really. Yeah. So
initially,
it's maybe important.
12 people.
Right, 12 people to speak. It's maybe important, given where we still are in many respects, and in terms of people in institutions and the coming home work. It might be useful just to kind of remind ourselves of the characteristics of the people who were being referred, because we still have that thing 25 years later about, it's really difficult to support these people, and
it's not the same as this person. We've never done this before.
Yeah.
Well, and this, I suppose it's important to say that sea change was explicitly different than inclusion, in that we
learned from
set
that
up specifically to support people who
that was part of
saying would otherwise would remain in institutional care, or and again, because you're doing something that I had never done before, we said we support people with challenge and blah blah blah. Again, once you've done that, you realise how mildly ridiculous it is, in that if you're supporting people who are complex and who are challenging, and they are still complex and challenging, then you're not doing your job well. So by dint of doing your job better, people aren't, and therefore your whole way of describing yourself is a lie. And we still have this, I swear.
It's brilliant, isn't it? What a brilliant problem you have, Sam.
Well, we still have, when the Scottish Government will do a certain look across organisations who work with people, will scare people's websites for, we work with people who are particularly complex and challenging, and you're kind of going, man, 25 years ago we tripped over the truth that if that's the way you talk about yourself, you're not doing your job very well. And I mean, literally, we had to redo the stuff that we come up with, because it put, one of the people we first started working with was on our board within about 4 or 5 years. He went from most complex to governance. And if you don't catch yourself and change the way you talk about it, then you're actually perpetuating something.
It's almost though without that at the time, So, and I think why John's brought it up again is because it keeps coming back to this, doesn't it?
Yeah.
People are too difficult. No, they're not. And we can't do this, or we've never done it before. Yes, we have. And when we do, do it well, and we support people and hear people and work it out with people, one person at a time, then actually massive change can happen for those individuals, and then you don't have all of that. So it is a difficult one, because that's where we keep coming back to. We're dragged back.
Our inability to learn is the bit. And I think if we were to be challenging of ourselves in the hospital closure programme, and we did the best we could with what we knew and where we were, and we did have researchers involved. We had Jim Ansell come and he was actively involved in it. What we didn't probably have is that longitudinal following people through evidence of the change, because we were doing enough in closing a hospital, as we described at the beginning of this, but it has meant that we come across the same things.
Exactly.
And for those of us who have been around for a long time, that's the bit where you think, has there been no learning in the system? John and I literally sat in a meeting the other week where somebody, well-intentioned, talked about how it's all the more hard the longer someone's been in hospital. I go back to a wonderful man called Maggie, who had been in hospital since he was 13 and was in his 80s when I helped him move to a house in the East End of Glasgow. After a month of being in his house in the East End of Glasgow, he had his remote, he was watching his telly, he moved near his nephew, he had been warehoused somewhere. He wasn't more complex.
No.
Now, the people who we do have as part of our programme around coming home, if they've been in hospital for 10 years and are still distressed, it basically means wherever they have been, no one has understood how to help them live a life of peace and comfort. That does not mean they're more complex. It means we have not done our job.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that distresses me, if anything.
In and amongst this group of people, there are people who've committed offences or come to the attention of the law. Would that be true to say? Or
yes, absolutely. The people we supported were these people who, and the interesting thing was, oftentimes the stipulation that was required around them when they moved into the community was greater than they had in the hospital. One gentleman used to head off on his bike home to his family at the weekend, when he was moving out of hospital because he'd been diverted from prison, everyone suddenly gets all, whoa! They're like, he has been cycling for miles to go to his brother's. So, we put all the stipulations around respecting his rights and managing the risks in a way that was far more diligent than had happened in the hospital, where he was basically worked as a kind of courier because he was good on a bike. Could send him into the village.
Yeah.
So just
people
as
have all of these.
Just as a matter of kind of just being clear about dates and things then. So Sea Change continued to be part of Inclusion Glasgow, set up.
So the first day, my first day was the 1st of May 2001.
And then you became
in January 2004, it became separately constituted.
Yeah. So
we went through a legal separation,
yep.
But none of my colleagues who worked for Sea Change felt or knew anything different. We went through the whole legal consultation, but because we'd set up,
that's right.
It was a non-issue.
People were employed to work with Sea Change.
Yep.
Right.
Project
we had a structure that fell within the board of inclusion, and you had your own boards that then, so that right from the start we set this thing very clearly up with its own life, its own identity, and built it to had a strength. And that was the point, really, of independence. It wasn't about, it was all about you deciding
financial viability.
Financial viability when you were strong enough to go on your own. And that was the same, obviously, for partners, and we'll talk about that with Doreen, but
So 24.
And I am rubbish at doing the introductions because I didn't.
Not 24.
I didn't.
2004.
2004.
I didn't introduce you.
We didn't separate out completely because we agreed.
No, that's true. Actually, it's important to say.
We separated out legally. Actually, Sea Change took on the management and the employment of our joint finance team and seconded them for part of their time to inclusion in a way that was to try and ensure the sustainability of both organisations, keep to our commitment of being lean and efficient. Yeah, so there was.
And we had buying power together. We did a lot of stuff like that, and we've talked very briefly about Ultram. We haven't really described it, but I think we want to do that at some point. Talk about that as a vehicle for some of the. So what we're trying to do at Inclusion, Ultram was about trying to do more Scotland wide.
Yeah. Learning, sharing, the benefit of everybody.
Open source of anything that we had, we shared with each other. Lack of competition between organisations, sharing of experiences and knowledge, and supporting each other.
And collaboration.
And so some of the stuff that came from that would be the work that we did around relationships and sexuality through Ultram, and then Sea Change took on hosting dates and mates, and that was work that we'd done across all of our organisations, put resources into the work that led up to that, and kind of the development of the ideas and the policies and resources, but at the end of the day, what made sense was we need to do something very real here, and we put a wee bit of money in each.
So you say yes and work out how to do it.
We worked out how to do it, and dates and mates came into being as well, which Sea Change hosted in the same principle as we hosted Sea Change.
Yes, Sea Change fostered dates and mates, and now it's an independent organisation.
Exactly. So that replication, paying it forward. So it's a great example, isn't it?
Yeah, and Ultram is the Gaelic word for fostering. So that's why we finally settled on that name. Is it true to say, though, in the fullness of time, that partnership working proved difficult to sustain? I mean, what we're describing, Ultram, or even the shared.
I think it did. I think what really did happen, in all honesty, was it became a lot to do with us and trust and personality, wasn't it? I think when people moved and changed, maybe
it's relationships. It's all down to relationships, and that idea of mutuality. And it's really difficult if you've got people who are longer standing, and who are used to that mutuality, and then a change in people, and folk come and look for a different dynamic, which is I want to get what I can from this, in part because of their newness. But then it just changes what's a very kind of nuanced dynamic, which is about that mutuality.
Yeah. I don't think we could have done what we did at that time. If you think about the discussions we've been having here, the size of the task, and you couldn't do it on your own. You could never have been an organisation trying to work on your own in isolation and doing that. You didn't have what it took. We needed, we were more than the sum of our individual parts when we were together and we came together. And that was the only way that it worked, was because we had all these people, great people, with different ideas, different thoughts, sharing ideas, supporting each other, organisations doing that. There was massive strength in the sister relationship that we had for a long, long time. We were able to really
beyond that, and I think there was fertile ground and support. So in North Lanarkshire for Sol, there was a commissioning culture that absolutely understood and supported the development of the organisation. For Sea Change in Glasgow, we had that. We had it for a good long while, and then it changed. So for small supports organisations or small organisations, there are real risks in being so identified to an area if the culture in that area changes.
Yes.
So I having been the CEO of an organisation now for 25 years, you feel that weft and wane. You feel that change over time. So I'm involved in supporting others to develop small sports organisations, but I'm also like you just have to also be aware that it's not just what you're doing, it's the environment you're doing it in, and nurturing and cultivating those relationships. We can only ever do good work when we're supported to do it. Doesn't matter how good we think we are. It's if we're supported to do it.
Yes.
So to mix our metaphors then, like fostering's easier in fertile ground.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Sam, we're probably getting towards the end of the time here. We'll leave the last words here for you. So it's 22 years
25.
since.
Is it 20?
Well, 22 years since the formal separation. 25.
Yeah,
25 go back to 2001.
And many more if we think about when we started working together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. As you look back in terms of where we were, where we are now, what was still to do? What's your thoughts?
We need to listen to people. I think we need greater humility in our system. We overcomplicate things all the time, and if we just think, and this is the difficult bit. If we just think our job is to listen to the person and those who love them, and work out that we have to earn trust. No one should trust us automatically, not if they've been any part of our system. So we've got to earn it, and that means we keep on holding on and apologising and trying as hard as we can to get it better.
Yep.
But that's our responsibility. People aren't there to be fixed. We need to do better our job. And I suppose the bit for me that I find hardest is that we still don't seem to be doing that in so many cases. We don't have to get it right all the time, but if you don't get it right, own to the fact that you haven't, and listen to the person and work out what you need to do next.
Find another way, as
Find another
Mark
way.
Gold would have said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed, Sam. We could have been here for another 4 hours, I'm sure. It's amazing how much there is to unpick and learn, but thank you for taking part, and
My pleasure.
we all... Well, so did I. I'm sure you did, Francis. And look out for further Radical Visions podcasts in the near future.
It's great having it's just great having these conversations. You've got no light.
Sun's just come out.
What happened?
Sorry. The sun's come out in Glasgow.
Oh, wow.
That's
No, it's just great having these conversations, and it is amazing how it's interesting, isn't it? Even your memory is quite kind of and then somebody just sparks that off, and you realise that you'd forgotten that bit of the story and how it all fits together. So I think it's been a great experience for us just to spend a wee bit of time having these conversations, and really appreciate taking time to come and do that with us. And we appreciate you, and have done for more than 25 years, and hopefully will for the next. Maybe not 25, but being part of that journey together, really, and part of our story, really, or each other's stories, really, which is really important. As
keep trying to do the good stuff, really.
Yeah, absolutely.